Hello everyone and welcome. Make a cup of your favorite drink and get comfortable because this is a wonderful time for new stories from YellowCat. Send your own stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. Lawyers of Reddit, what is the biggest, well, you didn't tell me that moment you've had in your career? Recently had a client's fact witness, an employee of the client, reveal at his deposition that he had signed an agreement which pays him a substantial bonus if the client wins the lawsuit. Our jaws dropped. How can you possibly give believable factual testimony at trial if you stand to earn a windfall if one side prevails? Ugh. I represented a client who was suing for jaw and mouth related injuries. I retained her regular dentist to testify as her expert witness. 2 days before our impending trial, my client casually mentions that she will be arriving at the courthouse with her dentist because they had become romantically involved and lived together for the past year. She had more than a year at her disposal to tell me this little bit of wonderful news. And so, I immediately became more agreeable to a last-minute pretrial settlement. I worked for Insert Major Airline and found out through a mind-numbing contract review that they were double-dipping. They had entered into an exclusivity agreement with one Insert Major Airline repair provider and, without telling me that, had asked me to engage in a separate exclusivity agreement with another provider so they could get a second $25 million rebate. They intentionally had 2 separate attorneys on each transaction so we wouldn't know about the double dipping. I don't know if $25 million sounds like a lot to you, but when you're talking about airplanes, which costs money, I am not going to get disbarred so you can make a little extra money. Quit on the spot. Obligatory not a lawyer, but I watched this unfold as the foreperson of a jury. Defendant decided to be his own lawyer, accused of pulling over and switching drivers in a car while being pursued by police for driving without a license while on probation for DUI. Officer pursuing was the same officer who arrested him for the original DUI. Playing Perry Mason, defendant put his buddy on the stand and asked point blank, who was driving the car that day? Buddy replied, "You mean before or after we switched drivers?" It was all we could do to keep a straight face. A bit of a legend, but I got to read the actual trial record when a guy who claimed total loss of the use of his right arm testified for 45 minutes he had hurt his left arm. He even lifted his allegedly horrifically injured right arm above his head to demonstrate which appendage was effed. One of his attorneys just packed up his ass and walked out. Kinda the opposite of what you meant, but what's a good lawyer story if it doesn't follow the letter of the law while breaking the spirit of the law? My grandfather was a lawyer for a big oil company. They ordered a bunch of steel pipe for a new pipeline, and when the construction workers tried to work on it, they found it was somehow magnetized. The pipe was so magnetic, their blowtorch flames didn't go straight, so they were having a really hard time welding the pipe sections together. My grandfather tried to sue the pipe manufacturer, but they just said that nothing in the original contract specified the pipe couldn't be magnetic. So the lawsuit fell through, and from then on, they had to specify in every contract that the metal not be magnetic. Friend and classmate of mine was parked downtown, which is not a great neighborhood. Someone comes up to her window to carjack her. She slowly rolls down her window and in her most disappointed voice is like, "Come on, X, I just got you out on bail." X then proceeds to apologize and walk away. Had a client tell me that they had just signed a bunch of claim releases that ultimately tanked their case after I had explicitly told them to let me look at all documents prior to signing since I had seen something similar that they had signed almost a year back. They'd signed one of these while we were gathering documents and about to take a deposition, and when I saw my client's signature on it, I just facepalmed because his signature ended up waiving away any rights they'd had to payment. Ugh. I was representing a guy. The senior partner had told me to handle the case. Client told me an old lady he had befriended had lent him some money. Concerned about an upcoming surgery, she had told him that if anything happened to her, in other words, if she passed away, he must consider the money a gift. Her signature was on a document to this effect dated about a week before the surgery. Her estate was suing to get the money back. He said, "Nuh-uh, it was a gift." I subpoenaed her medical records, but they were only given to me on the day of the trial. It turned out that the old lady had fallen, been rushed to hospital, had emergency surgery, and passed away thereafter. There was only one surgery. I subpoenaed the hospital records from the hospital. The plaintiff, the estate, didn't have them at any stage prior to that, so they were not discoverable. Our client's defense was that the money was a loan-turned-gift, but the plaintiff didn't know the background information that the client had given to me about the old lady's worries. We knew the date and the type of surgery. The only thing we didn't know was that it was an emergency. My client's lie was the only cause of the surprise. I was the victim in a court case due to a traffic incident. I was on my motorcycle and had a verbal with a car driver who flicked a cigarette butt out his window and went down my jacket. He then attempted to run me over with his car. There were 3 witnesses, including an expert of acceleration. The guy claimed he was doing 60 kilometers an hour and I braked suddenly in front of him. What happened was I was going increasingly faster to get away from him and he rammed me when I was doing 100 kilometers an hour around a corner, which the witnesses backed up. As soon as his lawyer heard that there were 4 people saying what happened, he was speechless and asked to speak to his client, who then pled guilty. He had crashed his car head-on into a car coming the other way. I managed to stay upright and made it through the corner. No damage to my bike whatsoever. To clear things up, it was in Australia. I also have no idea what an expert in acceleration is, but when I gave my story to the cops, I told them the speeds I was doing. The guy told them the exact same speeds, so he clearly knew something about it. I have no idea why his lawyer didn't know about what we had said. We didn't even get to enter the courtroom, it was over so fast, and just know what the police prosecutor told us. Client intake working pro bono in a fair housing clinic. Have a really solid case based on what Miss Smith has told us. Her landlord John was calling her a good-for-nothing N, worthless piece of blash, etc. I think we have a really good case to ensure this woman won't have to pay her current landlord, or any landlord, any rent for a long time. I asked the question that always has a bad answer. How long has it been since you paid rent? It had been a few months, but I can work with that. 25 minutes of listening, a lot of venting is going on, and documenting the case later, I start getting all of the final information. I ask for the landlord's address. Miss Smith lets me know it is the same address. I'm surprised. I ask if it is a duplex. Miss Smith says no. I ask for the landlord's full name, John Smith. The rest of the conversation went something like this. Me: Miss Smith, is John Smith in any way related to you? Miss Smith: yeah, he's my dad. Standing outside of the courtroom first on the docket. Matter is for a divorce order after having to get substituted service because the other party was hiding out in another country. Client says to me, "Oh, I think I am already divorced in country. I got some papers a month ago." Matter is called 30 seconds later. I explain to the judge that I've just been told this at the door. Judge gives me a look that is half piteous, half "are you effing kidding me?" then reschedules the matter with instructions to confirm whether the client was divorced elsewhere. Turns out that they were. Client proceeded to leave a bad review because we couldn't get her a divorce order, despite the fact she was already divorced. Throwaway account. Not a lawyer, but my ex-wife was one of these people. I was divorcing her under one of the few no-fault conditions my state allows. In our case, for fraud. My case was solid and it was going to result in a quick annulment. It's rare to happen these days, apparently. Because this was such a sure thing when started the divorce stuff, I told her she was being summoned for an annulment due to fraud. I told her this because I needed to make sure she understood this wasn't going to be a typical divorce and it was going to result in zero spousal support for her. Well, she did the smart thing and got a lawyer for herself. Apparently, she told her lawyer I was filing for fraud on my own without a lawyer, and that gave her lawyer the impression I was misusing the fraud divorce opportunity and had no case. What she didn't tell her lawyer was that I did have a lawyer, and she never told her about the fraud she committed in the marriage. Without spilling details, the fraud was super documented and substantial. Well, summons was served, her lawyer found out, and dropped her in a heartbeat. The trial was quick, I won my case, she got nothing. She didn't have legal representation at all after that first lawyer. Do not lie to your lawyer. Trial for misdemeanor criminal threats. This can be hard to prove, and my client was adamant he did nothing. I had phone records, some good video. It was a simple business relationship that soured, and the alleged victim was terrible. Aggressive, liar, stealing from a charity she had been involved with, sort of a public figure. My client was alleged to have made a threat to her in a hallway. Morning of trial, prosecutor gives me some late discovery. It is an audio of my client's voice. He left a voicemail, wondering why the Vic had security at an event and asking, did someone threaten to shoot her in her MFing head? We listened to it in the hallway. He still wanted his trial. I did what I could, but yeah, that was a quick guilty. Public defender doing a felony assault case with a twist. Victim claimed that the very unique assault incident happened twice, identically 2 days in a row. So imagine she claimed he threatened her with an icicle, and she called her sister, and the sister told her to eat a fruit snack or whatever, but 2 days in a row. During direct, she was adamant that things happened this way twice. Yes, it sounds crazy. Yes, but it happened. Yes, she was so scared and he assaulted her, etc. She sounded pretty believable, and I'm starting to get worried. Cross-examination. I start asking questions to set her up for an impeachment. Finally, I ask, victim name here, are we supposed to believe that these unbelievable made-up sounding things happened to you not once, but twice? She then quietly says, yes. And I pushed, yes what? Yes, I made it up. This admission put me in such a shock, I didn't even know what to say. I asked a few more questions and sat down, and the DA futilely attempted to redirect the questions as if I had intimidated her. Client walked on the felonies, but went down on a misdemeanor time served assault even after all of this. But I never again had a victim admit they were making things up on stand. I was working with a major case full of details. This case was like 5 years long, and there were lots of important information we had to read whenever we had to talk with the clients or the judge, etc. One Friday, my boss comes and tells me at 13 p.m. that we should have a meeting relating to the last part of the acquisition, that I should lead that meeting without him, and all the other lawyers were participating, the lawyers from the other 12 parts involved. I said, okay, I'll do it. Then went to have my lunch in a kitchen room the office had. 15 minutes later, I hear someone calling me, and as I stand up before responding, the door opens and my boss says, I was almost forgetting. It starts in 20 minutes. I felt my entire spine going cold. For the next couple minutes, I couldn't barely breathe. But then I thought, if my boss himself treated his major cases like this, so F this ass. Thank God it all went good, but aftermath, my boss heard some things I usually don't say. Despite that, he kept my job in the end. How the F you don't schedule things right? I had a client who claimed she was discriminated against by her employer due to disabilities she sustained after a car crash. She said her disabilities were so bad she couldn't drive or sit at her desk for any amount of time, and her company refused to accommodate her by letting her work remotely. Needless to say, it was embarrassing when opposing counsel told me my client played in a full-contact lingerie football league and had telecast videos of her on YouTube playing, running, getting tackled, and dancing in the end zone on the very date her doctor, who lost his license, gave her a note saying she was bedbound. I showed her the footage, and she continued to lie despite having an effing stat sheet for receiving yards when she was supposedly in the hospital. Never been angrier at a client. Thank you for watching. Guys, thank you for all the support and the likes. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. See you next time.